What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming with another box office breakdown where we see the opening weekend for Minions: The Rise of Gru from Universal, making a whopping $108.5 million domestically, which is completely shattering what Lightyear has done up to this point. Keep in mind that Lightyear only opened to around $50 million or so, I think around $51 million in its opening weekend. The original projections for that film had it close to 100, then it dropped to 75, and then it ended up underperforming in almost every single capacity. Minions, on the other hand, is running away currently with the domestic box office, with the animated box office for the summer, essentially, with $108.5 million, putting it already at the point where it is ahead of Lightyear's total domestic number. Again, this is just insane stuff right here going on, but also I think it's a huge message to Disney, to Chris Evans, to Hollywood in general, that if you make movies and you try and push identity politics and you make it very clear in your media coverage and in the stories that you put out there about your films, that you're trying to push different agenda items, when you have things like Baymax going on in Disney Plus, where you're trying to shove down random nonsense down kids' throats, and when you're trying to do so many things like battling against the laws in Florida, etc., you start to realize that, hey, families don't like that. And remember that not all families have a certain bias to them. Again, families in general will go all over the political spectrum, will have all different kinds of concepts and ideas, and the ones that you happen to be pushing, Disney especially, all the studios really are doing it in some form or fashion, but Disney, more so than anyone else, I feel, especially when it's getting, again, directed towards kids, is doing it in such a way where vast majority of families don't have anything or don't want to have anything to do with it, and hey, you're losing money because of it, and go woke, go broke Lightyear. Hashtag Lightyear lost money. But Minions: Rise of Gru from Universal. Universal is obviously not a good studio either. They're doing a lot of work with China, for instance. One of their films alone has already given over 100 plus million to the CCP, and we're going to call that out. That is Jurassic World Dominion. But let's go ahead and have, again, some positives about Minions destroying Lightyear. $108.5 million domestically. Coming in at the number 2 spot once again, after being out for 6 weeks, had only a 14% drop. This little movie, it's really not a little movie at all, but this movie has done things that no one, I think, would have ever thought possible. Most people would never have thought that, if we're talking about the highest grossing films of 2022, that Top Gun Maverick would be in that mix. You know, I'm happy that it's doing that because it's been one of my most anticipated films for the last couple of years, and it lived up to and exceeded that hype that I was, in my own mind building it up to. And I'm so happy to see that many other people are seeing it the same way. And the fact that the film is doing this well, even after 6 weeks, still at over 3,800 screens after 6 weeks, is just phenomenal to see. So Top Gun Maverick now up to $564 million domestically. I think it has a really good chance of getting and ending around 600 plus million in the domestic marketplace, which is just insane. Coming in at number 3 spot is Elvis with $19 million, a 39% drop from the previous week. That's actually a pretty strong hold there, making the film at $67.3 million domestically. Jurassic World Dominion dropping to the number 4 spot, making another $15.6 million, which is a 41% drop. And so even though it's definitely not nearly as bad as a film like Lightyear, for instance, which is seeing 60-plus drops almost every single week, it is a movie that's made its money back, but the chances of it getting to $1 billion are not nearly as likely as it once was in the beginning. There's still a chance out there. It's still adding a pretty large amount of money, both domestically and internationally every single week, but law of diminishing returns, upcoming and increasing competition at the box office, things like Thor: Love and Thunder coming out next week, even though I think that it's going to be a complete trash film, based on the trailers and based on what we've been told about it. I don't deny the fact that there are a lot of MCU stands that are going to go see that film and are going to go, boost up that box office and have it be a pretty big hit. Basically, it's going to take away the very sore and the very black eye that they have right now, Disney has, when it comes to Lightyear, amongst other things. But maybe all the stuff going on right now that's clearly impacting Lightyear's box office, maybe, just maybe, it'll impact the box office for Thor: Love and Thunder. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But Dominion coming in with $15.6 million puts its domestic to $331.8. It has at over $800 million worldwide, though, so a lot of that money coming from the international markets, over $100 million of that coming from China. More specifically, the CCP. The Black Phone, in its second week of release, saw a pretty strong hold as well, 48%. This film has now crossed its break-even point and so is now making some profits. I've heard some pretty good things about it. I hear it's a lot more of a psychological thriller, which I tend to like, so maybe I'll actually go to see this film this week if I can. And then coming in at the number 6 spot, that's right, bumped out of the top 5, is Lightyear, making a dismal 6.5 million, another 64% drop. Remember that in its first week of release, from its second weekend, it dropped about 65%. So now we have another drop around the same amount. So this movie is just losing money every single day. The money is not coming in for this movie, and now Disney's even starting to pull this from theaters. I would not be surprised if we start to see some massive numbers, as far as the theaters go, being pulled for this movie. And also, I would not be surprised if Lightyear got announced to be an early release on Disney Plus, because at this point, they really don't have much to go with. Maybe Thor: Love and Thunder will be able to get things back on track for them, but for me, we'll have to wait and see what those numbers are. Now at $105.3 million domestically, but as I said, Minions did that in one weekend, and it's taken 3 weekends for Lightyear to get to that point. So if that message is not clear enough, I don't know what else will. And the media can continue to try to spin the number to say, well, it's because kids are just, families, they're not going to the theater anymore because they want to wait for things to come out of Disney Plus. Okay, if that were true, then why do you have a situation where Minions is making 108.5? One could argue saying, well, those are the kinds of movies from Universal that don't get put out on streaming services right away. Maybe. However, it's still also a kids movie. It is also from a company that, though it's doing, dealings with China, is not trying to push down the type of politics that Disney is on its kid and in its kids content, which has become a pretty big story nationally and internationally at this point. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, working with the CCP, not nearly as bad, I'd say, as trying to, again, indoctrinate children and, get into the grooming business, as it were. Again, screw you, Disney. Minions Rise of Gru, as it says right here from Deadline, boogies to $202 million worldwide. Again, insane numbers there. Maverick at $1.1 billion. Dominion passing passing $800 million. So Minions, as we can see from these numbers right here, is at $221.6 million. And comparing this to some of the other films, because someone at one point said, well, Despicable Me has always been a very lucrative franchise, which I never denied. But also we have to remember that Toy Story 4 made over $1 billion, as crappy as a movie as it was. Toy Story 3, which was really the end of the era, made a whopping $1.2 billion when you adjust those numbers for inflation. So just to look at where Lightyear is versus where even Toy Story 4 was, these are abysmal numbers, and I think that this is something that we're going to be looking very closely at in how this compares to the previous films in the Toy Story franchise. Obviously, this is not a direct Toy Story movie, but it's clearly inspired, and you would think that the $1.2 to billion people who added money to that number for those two movies would show up for this movie if it was any good, but looking like that's not actually the case. What is a really good movie, though, is Top Gun Maverick. So happy to see this film. $1.1 billion, doing incredibly well. Elvis up to $113.5 million. Jurassic World Dominion, $828 million. Black Phone at $76.7. And Lightyear only at $189.1. Not likely to be a big hit. This film needed to have been at $250 million last weekend and have had any hope of getting to its break even. So this film is going to end up losing a crap ton of money. Looking at the chart just a little bit, just to give you an idea of where these films are. Black Phone, with now 76.7, puts the film $20.5 million in the black. So this film is profitable, going to make somewhere between $40 and $66 million. If you look to Elvis, again, because this budget was so high, $85 million budget, insanely high, it could end up either losing 30 or make as much as about 8 million or so. We'll have to watch this film as it keeps going through. But for me, what's kept me from going to see this film right away is that really creepy performance from Tom Hanks. We are both like little children. Speaking of children's movies that really aren't being made for children, it seems, anymore, Lightyear, $189.1 million, has this film still at $186.5 in the red for this movie. It's projected to lose somewhere between 170 and 117. Yeah. Not looking good at all for this film, and couldn't happen to a nicer studio. But those are the numbers as they stand. So what are y'all's thoughts? Have you seen Minions: The Rise of Gru? Is it worth seeing at all? And what are your thoughts about Lightyear being a complete massive bust? All films like Top Gun Maverick continue to soar into the stratosphere in so many ways that no one I think ever saw coming. Let me know in the comment section down below, and if you want to see a fuller box office breakdown video with even more charts, check out my channel OMB Reviews, where I will do my own breakdown in a little bit. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Make sure you smash the like button, lap the fire button on Odyssey. Have a wonderful rest of y'all's day, and as always, God bless.